So now that we have created our first GitHub repository, we can make files, test code from here, and even push them to the same GitHub repository. That's the online one. So I'm going to make 3 files. So the first file that I'm going to make is a README file. Of course, you can use the touch command. So touch then readme.md. And I'm just going to do something else. So I'll say echo. So I'll say this is a readme file. Then I'm going to redirect the output to readme.md. So this will create the file and it will also add that content to the file. So I'm also going to create 2 more files. So I'll say echo, then I'll say this is file 1. Then I'm going to redirect that to file 1 like that. Then I'll press enter. Then I'll do the same thing for file 2. So I'll say this is file 2. Then I'm going to redirect the output to file 2. This will create the 3 files that I want. So there's a readme.md file, there's file 1, and there's also file 2. But then these files are not currently being tracked by Git. Hence, we'll have to use the git add command. Now, running this command with the selected file adds them to the staging area. And these are the files that will be included in the next commit. So if you want to, you can say git add. So you only add 1 file. So you can say git add file 1. So running this command will only add file 1 to the staging area. So let me press enter. Then I can use git status to check if there are any files that are not being tracked by Git or those files that haven't been added to the staging area, and also see those files that have been added to the staging area. So if I press enter, I can now see that file 1 is currently in the staging area and is being tracked by Git. But then there are 2 other files that are not being tracked by Git, which is the readme.md file and file 2. Now for git add, the command that we ran, git add file 1, only added file 1. But then we can also add all the files that are in the working directory if you wanted to. So to do that, you say git add, then you put a dot or a full stop. So saying git add, then space, then full stop is going to add all of the files that are in the working directory to the staging area. So if I press enter, then I run git status, it will show me to say that all of the files are currently in the staging area. Now, what if you don't want some files to be added to the staging area, even if you use git add dot, which adds all of the files in the working directory to the staging area? So this is where the .git ignore file comes in handy. So let's say, okay, to illustrate, let me first make 2 files. So I'm going to make, in fact, I'm going to make 3 files. So let me make 3 files. So I'll say touch, then I'll say file 3.txt. Then I'm also going to make file 4.txt. Then I'll also make file 5.txt. So these files have now been added. So they've been created and they are now in here. But then if I was to run git status, we'll see to say that these files are currently not being tracked by Git, or they are not in the staging area. Now, what if I don't want these files to be tracked by Git? What if I don't want these files to be pushed together with the other files whenever I want to push the GitHub repository? So this is where you now make a .git ignore file. So if I wanted to make things easier, you can use echo and that the E option, so that you can use the escape N key, which will allow you to go to the next line. So I can say echo E, then I'll say file 3. So if I want, I can say that, then file3. So the / is showing that I want the file3 that I want to add is in the current directory. So this file3 is in the working directory, and so I've used the /. So / file3, then escape n for space. So this is the next one. So the next thing that I'm going to write is going to come onto the next line. So this is supposed to be file3.txt, sorry. Then this one is going to be file4.txt. So I've added this, then I'm going to redirect them to a .gitignore file. So I've now redirected them to a .gitignore file. And this will now create the .gitignore file, and it's going to add this text into the .gitignore file. So we can quickly check using ls then -a, the A option, because this is a hidden file. Any file that starts with a dot is a hidden file. So because I want to see all hidden files, so I use that command. So there's a .gitignore file there. Now let's just quickly check what's in there. So I'll say cat, then .gitignore, and this will show me the files that are in there. Okay, so sorry, it's showing a question mark there. So let me just edit using vi. So I'll say vi.gitignore. Okay, so to show that, so you press I for insert. So to show that I want something that's in the working directory, I'll use that. Then file3.txt. Then I'll do the same thing for file4. And so we have these two files. So these two files are not going to be added to the staging area, even when we run git add then o, which is git add then the dot. So I can save this using escape, then double capital letter Z. So I can now run cat, and there. So we now have file3.txt in the current working directory and file4.txt. So these files are not going to be tracked by Git, even if I run git add o. So if I was to quickly check using git status, these files won't even be shown. So file3 and file4 are not being shown because they're in the .gitignore file. But file5 is being shown because it's not in the .gitignore file. If I wanted to, I can also use wildcards in here. So for you guys who are maybe new to the channel, you can check some of my other videos. I explained on wildcards. So we can even use wildcards to exclude any file. Let's say maybe any file that ends with a .txt extension. So let me go back to vi, and I say .gitignore. Sorry, so gitignore. So in here, if I wanted to make my work easier than typing all this, I can simply put star then .txt. So this is going to exclude all of the files that end with .txt. So it will exclude them, and they won't be added to the staging area. So I'll press escape, double capital letter Z. And then if I run git status, so if I run git status, we see that only .gitignore file is supposed to be added now. So all the other files, file3.txt, file4.txt, and file5.txt are not being tracked by Git. And even if I run git add all, they won't be added to the staging area. So if I say git add all, then ls, then I say git status. So we see that file3, file4.txt, and file5.txt are not being tracked by Git, so they won't be added to the staging area. Now, what if there's a particular file that ends with .txt, but I don't want that file to be ignored by Git? So that's where the exclamation mark comes in. So you write exclamation mark, then you put the file name. So let me edit the .gitignore file. So vi.gitignore, Then in here, I'll press I for insert, then press enter. So on the next line, I'll put the exclamation mark, and let's say maybe I don't want file 4 to be ignored by Git. So I'll say question mark, exclamation mark, then I'll say file 4.txt. Then I'll press escape, then double capital letter Z. Then if I run git status, we see to say that git ignore file has been modified because we've changed something in the file. Then file 4.txt is no longer being ignored by Git. So it has even come here and it's saying that this is not being tracked. So if I was to say git add all, we see that file 4 will now be added to the staging area. And it will be added to the files that will commit. So git add all, then git status. So we see that file 4 has now been added. So file 4.txt, there's also file 2, then there's file 1, then there's the readme.md, then there's the .git ignore file. Now, let's say you've added these files to be committed, so they are now in the staging area, but then you mistakenly delete one of the files. So let me delete. Let's just imagine that I've deleted a certain file by mistake. So I'll delete the readme.md file. So let me say remove. So I'll remove the readme.md file. So this was by mistake. If I say ls, if I run ls, readme.md is no longer in here. So how can you restore that same readme.md? So if you've added files and they are being tracked by Git, you can actually restore those files even if you've deleted them or even if you've made any changes, you can restore them to the previous version. So let me say git status, then we'll see the command that I'm talking about. So git status, then it's saying deleted readme.md. So I can run this command git restore, then the file name, then this will discard changes in working directory. So I can say git restore, then I'll say readme, so readme.md. So this will now restore the readme.md file. So if I run ls, we see that the readme.md file is there, file 1, and all the other files are now in here. So once you are done with all this, the next thing is to commit the changes. So only the files that have been added to the staging area will be committed. So git status. So all these files .gitignore, readme.md, file 1, file 2, file 4.txt are the files that will be added to the commit. So for you to commit, you say git commit, then you add the message. So I'll say this is my first commit. So this is my first commit. Then I'll press enter. So git commit, and the message is this is my first commit. So these are the 5 files that have been changed. So 5 files changed, 5 insertions. So there's a .gitignore, there's the readme.md file, there's file 1, there's file 2, and there's also file 4.txt. So now, if I needed to revert back to this version at some point, I will know to say that, oh, the first version that I had was this one when I made the commit saying this is my first commit. So the messages that you add whenever you want to commit should be kind of sensible. They should help you figure out at what stage maybe your repository or changes in your repository were at, so that at any point you can revert back to one of the stages, because this is a snapshot. So this will now be added to the log file. So we'll get to the log files along the tutorial, but for now, this is where we can reach, then we'll get back to the log files. So now that we've committed, we can now push these changes to our GitHub repository, the online one. So for you to do that, you use Git-push. So you use Git-push, then this will push all of the files to the Git repository that's online. So it will ask you for your username for the same GitHub account. So I'll simply put my username there. Then you also need to make sure that your password is close by. So once you add your password, it's now going to push everything to your GitHub repository that's online. So the password that you put is the same access token that we had generated. So if you don't have an access token, this is where now you might have issues. So if you do not have an access token, you make sure that you go back and you create your access token. Okay, so let me just copy that. Then I can paste it there. And there. So all the changes that I've made have now been pushed to my GitHub repository. So if I was to go to my GitHub repository, I'll actually find these files that I've made, and I'll find them there in the GitHub repository. So let me just come here. Then this is the home page. So I can go down, then I search for the repository, which is Shalomancer Tempro. So I can tap on that. Okay, so now that it has loaded, we can see the .gitignore file, the readme.md file. There's also file 1, 2, and file 4.txt. Then imagine that maybe you are anywhere else in the world. As long as you have a mobile device or anything that can connect to the internet and has a browser, you can actually check whatever you have in here. So for example, if I was to tap on the readme.md file, it will show me whatever is inside the readme.md file. I can even make changes from here and do anything that I want to with the files. So let me just make some changes to the readme.md file, then see how we can later on get these changes and add them to our local machine. So let me go to the readme.md file. Okay, so it's saying this is a readme. So you can go there on edit this file. So when I go there, I can tap on that. Then GitHub will allow me to edit this file. So at first I said this is a readme file. So I can add something and say, and now it has been updated from my GitHub repository online. Then I can commit changes. So commit message. So I can just keep the same one, update readme.md, then extend the description, there's no need, but you can add if you want to. So commit directly to the master branch, yes. So I'll commit the changes. So now that the changes have been committed, let's go back to the local machine. So let me go back to my GitHub repository on my local machine and see how I can add those changes to my local machine. So at this point, if I check what's in my readme.md file, it's only this is a readme file. So that's the only thing that's in my readme.md file. Now you use git pull if you want to get the changes that you made on your GitHub repository onto your local machine. So you use git pull. I'll just run that. Okay, so it has even shown you that readme.md there is the one that has been changed. So it's saying one file change, one insertion, one deletion. So let me run readme.md to see what's in there. Now we have what we changed from the GitHub repository online. So this is a readme file, and now it has been updated from my GitHub repository online. So it's as easy as that. And if you are new to the channel, please don't forget to like and subscribe, especially commenting, so that I know if you liked the video, and if you didn't, so that you can tell me some things that you need me to work on in the future. Thank you.